Welcome back to the Future of Supply Chain event here in Atlanta. My name is John Kingston. I'm the editor-at-large at FreightWaves. Let's see, we've only been going a few hours, and I think I've heard AI mentioned about 17 different times. So
at least.
So here to talk about it with me is Drew Bingham. He is the Chief Technology Officer of OTR Solutions, which is known primarily as a factoring company. I do want to say something about AI, and I think the timing of this. There were news reports yesterday that NVIDIA, the AI chip maker, might make it into the Dow Jones Industrial Average within the coming weeks. Now, that is probably the most exclusive corporate club in America. Somebody really big and powerful would have to get knocked out for NVIDIA to come in, but yet obviously you just can't ignore this, so this may be the story. So anyway, we're going to talk about AI in factoring and freight in general. Let's start off by noting, Drew, that AI is not new.
That's right.
But it does appear that right about a year ago or 15, 16 months ago, when generative AI really made it onto the scene, that its presence became so much better. And I think it's because the output of generative AI is something very digestible, something you can read. And that the whole range of applications in a corporate setting became much more wider. So why don't you talk about the differences between AI and generative AI? We'll just call it Gen AI for short.
Sure.
And some examples right off the bat to start in this freight supply chain.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me. Yeah, AI has been around for years, right? And the traditional AI, this legacy AI, this sounds crazy to say legacy AI because it's still a very, very powerful technology, has been around for a very long time and has really been designed to create a specific outcome for you. It's a programmable language. They have a bunch of set of tools. Machine learning is a good example. Predictive analytics is another tool. But really designed for a specific set of purposes to generate an outcome for you, or a predictable outcome for you at scale with some reliability. Now with the onslaught of Gen AI, right, ChatGPT and some of the other tools coming out from the other vendors, the generative side is the newer part, right? Which the big difference is the generative AI is creating something new for you, whereas the traditional AI is creating something based on what you expect it to create. In fact, the Gen AI, the GPT acronym is for Generative Pre-trained Translator, which means it's trained on a vast set of data, like literally every point of data in the internet, right? And so it's interpreting what you're asking it and making it very, very conversational in a way as you as a human can interact with it, right? And as these GPTs have come out, I haven't seen this much excitement really since the internet and kind of the .com boom. And so I equate what's happening now is everybody understands there's a tremendous amount of opportunity to be gained from using these tools, but don't really know exactly like where to jump in, right? It's like everybody wants to be a .com, but nobody really knew exactly what they wanted to do there.
So how do you jump in? You're in the world of factoring. OTR Solutions is a big player. Yep. Factoring is a very diffuse industry, very fragmented, probably ripe for consolidation. You have to think that maybe the technology needs of bringing Gen AI into a factoring operation are going to make that consolidation happen a lot faster. But so at your own company, I'm sure you won't give away all your state secrets, but how do you approach this? Are you viewing this as like, we think that there's a big payoff for this down the road, but it's going to take a significant upfront capital expenditure?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely think the future is bright around using AI and generative AI and other specific use cases. But really what we've looked at is saying, where do we think the highest value return is, and applying the technology to very, very specific use cases, right? If you start off and you think, I'm going to take advantage of ChatGPT and AI to transform my entire business, you might be at the very, very first step. Now you really want to be specific on what outcome you want to achieve, right? Because you can play with a ChatGPT all day long and probably never get it to where you want it to. But the real value in those technologies is training it on a specific use case with your own specific criteria to respond in the way you specifically want it to, which is a lot of specifics, but there's a reason I'm saying that, is you want to understand what outcome you're trying to get it, and you want it to learn how you want it to learn, right? I think the best analogy I've heard around some of these tools is like AI is really good as a very knowledgeable resource, like a doctor who's a generalist. But where you're going to get the most value is in getting those specialized use cases, and there are a ton of them in freight. But we've really applied our AI to some of the digital transformation that is happening, right? Freight is traditionally extremely paper-based. It's very, very difficult and labor-intensive to field all these documents in digital form, to translate that into value for your business. So we've started, and our biggest use case is around the document digitization. So getting documents in, processing them, and getting the data back.
Right, but that would not be considered the use of Gen AI. That's non-Gen AI, we'll call it?
Non-Gen AI.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
So
have you started to play with, I'm assuming you haven't adopted any use cases, but have you started to play with potential applications for it of Gen AI?
Yeah, so you're right, that is not a full Gen AI, but there is learning aspects to that technology that is still applicable. So we are looking at some other areas where we're going to use Gen AI not only to interpret the results, but kind of tell us what we need to be looking for. We've actually found a lot of value in just using it internally for other operations as an accelerant to some of the technology developing we're doing, and using it as just a good resource. But the Gen AI is, we're still exploring other opportunities where it's true Gen AI, right? I will say one of the use cases that keeps coming up is like a chatbot, a service agent. And actually one of the things that we've actually steered away from very deliberately is saying we still think our human resources are better at serving customers right now than a chatbot. And until we feel like we can train a chatbot, and we're exploring what that looks like, as good as or better than a human, we're not going to fully rely on that. But that is a very good use case for fielding very basic answers or very basic questions for things you get called on all day, every day. And then being able to work with a human of saying, hey, you might call in to get a status of an invoice, or you might call in to reset your password, for example. Those things are very simple, easy use cases that we trust the ChatGPT to give a very definitive response. Would there be other things we maybe haven't quite gotten into that we maybe don't want to surface other proprietary data on that we're going to then allow that chatbot to hand off to a customer service agent?
Now you talk about, we haven't trained. Let's talk about we. I mean, would your company, this is nothing particular about OTR, but would you have the in-house capabilities to do that? Or is that the type of thing that there's going to be a whole new industry of writing ChatGPT capabilities tied to individual industries?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if you look out there, a lot of the value add on top of these, on top of ChatGPT itself, is a whole marketplace for GPTs for specific use cases. So we are looking at very much of use cases specifically for us for freight, because it is a very specific use case, where we can get a result that responds in a way that a freight person would expect it to, right? I don't want to put a customer service GPT out there that's working for the restaurant industry, because it just wasn't work, right? So we wanted to understand, like, if you call in and say, hey, did you get my BOL? I want that bot to understand what a BOL is. And not only what the BOL is, but to be able to interpret the results of that and say, yeah, we got it. And oh, by the way, here's the details on it. Is this the one you expected? Right? So that is a very real use case we're exploring right now. We're building a lot of the underlying technology to give that data, right? Because it still needs to be trained on specific data set. Like I said, it was a generalist as you bring it in-house, but then we want to train it on specific data sets. So we work with tens of thousands of carriers every day. We work with tens of thousands of brokers every day. And that gives us not only depth in terms of volume of paperwork we're looking at, but it gives us a tremendous amount of breadth that we're able to interpret with a high degree of accuracy and a high degree of results that helps us do our jobs more efficiently and more effectively.
Can a small factoring company survive in this kind of scenario? It just seems that they just would not have the capabilities to keep up. I mean, they're already challenged to begin with, and there are a lot of small factoring companies out there. It would seem that this is the kind of thing that's just a death knell.
Right. I mean, it definitely has the opportunity to put people out of business. Not that we want that, right? We're pretty proud of our place in the industry, but we're not satisfied, and so we want to continue to innovate and grow. We view very much technology as the jet fuel for that. Yeah, a small factory could survive, but they're not going to be able to grow at scale the way we have, or really anybody, brokers too, of not being able to leverage this technology for growth. If you're not thinking about using technology as an enabler, whether it's an AI tool or an automation tool, if you're not thinking about how do I use technology to drive down my margins, or increase my margins, drive down my costs, you're going to get left behind, right? This market in particular, if you're not thinking about how do I get my operations more efficient, when it turns, and it will turn, right? We've seen it be very cyclical. You're going to get caught behind, and everybody else is going to outrun you, right?
How does this aid the independent owner-operator who's your customer? Obviously, if you're more efficient, that's probably good. But is there something more tangible, or really it's just the kind of thing where the benefits primarily fall to the factoring company?
Yeah, absolutely not. I mean, we exist to serve our customers, our clients, the small carriers. We use this technology to get them paid fast, right? We process, I can't tell you how many invoices a day, but we pay the same day. And we do that with a high degree of accuracy in the results we can provide. By the same token, our brokers with Epay Manager, we're providing that technology for brokers to do the same thing, right? Yes, it's a service, of course, but it's a benefit to the brokers and the carriers in that transaction. The carrier gets paid quicker. That carrier wants to work with that broker again because they pay them quicker. That broker has gotten their paperwork back quicker, and they can go invoice their shipper that much quicker, right? And if you talk about the folks that are, feeling the pain in the brokerage space, every day we can get that invoice out to their shipper and they can collect a day sooner is a tremendous amount of value, especially with higher interest rates and whatnot. Every day you can pull that back is more money back in their pocket and goes straight to the bottom line.
What do you think might be the first example of generative AI, of Gen AI, use in a brokerage company? I mean, it sounds to me like you're kind of throwing a lot of things at the wall. That's maybe not fair, because that sounds a little too vague. But that you're trying a lot of different things. You're not completely sure what it's going to work. What's your feeling already about what might be some of the first things where this becomes real and not just experimental?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I think I've mentioned one of them, which I think is a helpful agent that's kind of trained on your data to respond to just very simple requests, right? Where you don't need to have, and maybe we love to have people answering the phones, but maybe it's not efficient. It's trained on data. It's trained in understanding that data. That's a very real use case. The more complex ones are, we've kind of talked about is like, tell me what's, on top of some other technologies we have there, like our NLP technology is, hey, tell me what might be wrong with this invoice, right? Tell me, because I don't know. I have glasses. I can't read the paperwork. Tell me something I need to be aware of, right? And interacting with a GPT engine there would help you respond faster, look for invoices that maybe are fraudulent, right? I think fraud is a really good use case for it. And not so to be a silver bullet, because I think that's a really, really hard problem to solve, but to help you get smarter about what things to look for, right? If you're getting in a response and you're like, this seems odd, right? Your intuition's strong, but maybe couldn't put your finger on it. A chat GPT might be really good to say, here's all the data I'm looking at, and something doesn't seem right. Tell me what I'm missing. That's a very, very good, very, very real use case, and we're actually looking at a lot of those use cases right now.
Last question, how confident do you feel that there is enough personnel resources out there to do all this programming? I mean, I'll give you an example. I know of a fellow journalist, unfortunately, who lost her job, and she actually landed a temporary gig teaching AI how to write, Gen AI how to write, because that's not a natural thing that's going to come.
Yeah.
Are there enough people out there to speed this along?
I mean, I think there's always a war for talent, right? And in technology, there always has been. I think that it will come, right? And what I see happening in the ChatGPT has done is actually just moved you up the value chain, right? So the things that took a lot of time and took a lot of manpower to write code, for example, the things that are more rote, let the GPTs do that, and then the people who have traditionally written code start moving up to like, well, let me understand how to program a GPT versus just program in general, right? So I think though, there's been a constant evolution and innovation in technology. I think this is just more on that same thread. It's like the things we did yesterday are not the things we're going to do tomorrow.
Okay, Drew Bingham, the CTO of OTR Solutions, talking here about AI in general and Gen AI in specific. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Stick around for more Future of the Supply Chain. I'm John Kingston.